welcome everyone to the lecture 19 of the course Climate Change Extreme Events. This is week 7. In this week, we will primarily discuss about what are the recent case studies on extreme events, extreme climatic events or climate change influence on extreme weather events like that. We will also talk about different case studies, for example, extreme flooding events, extreme drought events like that. And then we will also talk about towards the next week of this, further, we will talk about how we can use some sort of predictive modeling tools to predict or to forecast these extreme events beforehand. Why it is important? First of all, why understanding of the historical events are important, because it gives us clue that okay, this can happen in historical period. Even a large magnitude events can also occur in a similar region or some different regions where the climatological or geographical or geological conditions are similar. So history is a kind of a clue to the future event. And why predictive modeling is important, because once we have some sort of understanding about historical extreme event patterns, we can predict what would likely to be happen in the future scenarios, so that we have a better management or mitigation plans to save the socio-economical impacts caused by these extreme events. So today in this lecture we will talk about primarily the 2013 Uttarakhand event and 2015 South Indian floods event. 2013 Uttarakhand flood is also called Kedarnath flood event, which happened and which has caused many lives, also disrupted the local socio-economic conditions very severely. Similarly, in 2015 the South Indian floods has also caused a severe disruption of urban or the neighboring region in the southern Indian region because of the flooding events, and that is basically we will discuss about the impact of these extreme events. We will also discuss about the factors which are responsible for these different types of extreme events, and then we will also discuss about what sort of the mitigation steps we should take, so that in the future scenarios or in the future time period, if similar types of catastrophical events will occur, we can have a little bit more active response system, so that we can mitigate the effect caused by these extreme events like that. So in this lecture we will primarily discuss about 2013 Uttarakhand and 2015 South Indian floods event. We will examine the impacts on human settlements, infrastructure and the environment. We will also analyze the response and mitigation efforts, and then towards the end of this lecture we will basically discuss about what sort of the lessons we have learned from these particular extreme events and what could be our future disaster preparedness, so that we can mitigate the effect of these different extreme events like that. So beginning with the 2013 Uttarakhand events, what has happened in 2013 during 14th and 17th June 2013, there is a large flood occurred in the Kedarnath valley, primarily because of the Mandakini river, which is the left bank tributary, has created so much of extreme flooding disaster in that particular region. So what happened in that particular day, these durations, particularly Kedarnath, Rudraprayag, Chamoli, Pithoragarh and Uttarkasi, these are the districts which were severely affected by extreme magnitude of flooding events in this particular region. What has happened because of this? Estimated over 5,700 people have been died, and several thousand people have been also affected because of migration from one place to another place, pilgrimage which has been affected by these catastrophic events there, and lots of socio-economic activities which were happening there, which has been severely disrupted and remained suspended for very prolonged period of time like that. What was the cause of this 2013 Uttarakhand event? So there was a lake in the upstream of this particular Kedarnath area, Chorabari Lake, which was about to heavily filled with the water. And during this particular period, 14th and 17th June in 2013, a very intense and prolonged monsoon rainfall event occurred, and the written period of that magnitude was crossing above 100 years, like that. So that monsoon event occurred, a very extreme rainfall event occurred, and because of the Chorabari, which has been already filled with a huge amount of water there, an intense rainfall has been supplied additional heavy amount of water to the lake, and lake boundary was very susceptible because it cannot carry that much amount of water in the upstream location, and therefore the boundary has been ruptured and the whole mass of the water has been forwarded to the downstream region. So that lake was completely filled, and because of the intense rainfall events, the lake boundary has been ruptured and whole mass of the water transported to the downstream region, and where several settlements were there, for example hotels and many human settlements, and that was significantly affected by the travel, the flood wave, the travel speed of the flood wave and the magnitude of the flood wave, and that has been basically completely destroyed whatever in that whatever in front of that flood waves, like that. Why it hasn't happened? Because unregulated development and deforestation in that particular region, that has created a significant damage, and therefore we have observed a significant damage caused by these particular event. You can look at this particular two images here. One is the left side, which is pre event image, and there is another image here which is the post event image. You can clearly see that whatever the location which was close to the Mandakini river channel was completely destroyed, and has been several buildings has been already affected because of these catastrophic flood events, like that. So the another case study is 2015 South Indian flood. In November and December 2015, there are several affected areas: Chennai, Kudalur, Kanchipuram, Trivulur and Puducherry. These are the locations which were significantly affected by flooding in 2015, and all these locations were very close to the sea. You can see that, and more than 500 people have been died, and many people have been affected because of this particular flooding event. The primary reason behind this flooding events was heavy northeast monsoon rainfall. It was encroachment on water bodies and poor drainage system, and it is also, we have observed, release of excess water from the reservoirs that can cause significant damage to the downstream region, and also because of the heavy rainfall and joint occurrence of these things, the effect of the flooding events has been exaggerated, has been significantly amplified, and therefore we have significant effect of 2015 South Indian floods in these different regions, like that. What are the meteorological and climatological factors? In Uttarakhand flood particularly, there was heavy precipitation due to interaction of monsoon and western disturbances, and there is a cloud burst leading to the flash floods and the Gulf event, which basically cause a very significant damage in this particular region. You can see that images here. In 16 June, we have very significant amount of rainfall which is occurring close to that particular Mandakini valley, and 17 June on 18 June also. So like that, you have very significant rainfall event, and on top of that you have Gulf event. These are the cascading events which cause a very significant damage or floods in 2013. On the other hand, the South Indian floods were primarily because of the extremely high rainfall in Chennai, or in the the Chennai and neighboring regions. Over 1200 mm in November 2015 were recorded, and this is primarily influenced by the El Nino on monsoon variability, and therefore we have a very intense rainfall events were recorded, and because of the reservoir levels were completely filled, and that is why we have observed a very significant impact caused by these different flooding events like that. What are the hydrological and geographical factors? In Uttarakhand, we have very steep terrain because it is situated in the mountain Himalayan region, which amplify the runoff, right. In the beginning, we have talked about deforestation. When we remove the forest cover from a certain region, what we are doing when we have flood event, the flood event will have a very higher velocity because there is a no resistance caused by the tree trunk in the flood paths like that. So, when you remove the flood forest cover from that region, we are amplifying the runoff velocity and their magnitude, and therefore we basically increases the chances of flooding events on those regions. Other factors, for example, melting glaciers, increasing water discharge like that. Sometimes it is also observed that when we have a high rate of melting glaciers in these regions has already saturated because of the water which is coming from the melting glaciers like that, and when the rainfall occurred there, it basically creates a very high peak of flood events in those regions, and therefore it creates intense flood events in that particular regions as well. On the other hand, when you are talking about South Indian region, urbanization and reduce of the natural drainage pattern are the primary leading causes of the flooding pattern in those regions. Why? Because if you have urbanization, urban settlements, what we are essentially doing, we are basically blocking the infiltration rate and promoting more surface runoff, and therefore it could increase the chance of flooding events in those regions like that, or over reliance on the reservoir leading to mismanagement. So, because of these 2015 South Indian flooding events occurred because of the mixed effect of urbanization and reservoir mismanagement, because the reservoir was completely filled and the extreme rainfall occurred. There was no space to accommodate the extra water, and they had to release some amount of water to the downstream region to avoid the flooding condition in the upstream region. So, that is what the these factors which led to the 2015 flooding events in the southern part of the India. You can see that there is a Chennai's urban sprawl or urban development since 1980 to 2000 and 2010. So, you can clearly see that urban built up has extensively increased across these whole region, and essentially because of the rise of this urban built up, we have significantly altered the infiltration behavior of this region, and therefore leading to more flooding conditions like that. What are the environmental and ecological consequences? Because of the Uttarakhand landslide, river bank erosion, destruction of forest and biodiversity loss was also reported, and that is the a secondary, or there are primary causes of because of these extreme weather events in that particular region. In the South Indian part, we have also reported contamination of the water bodies, soil degradation and loss of agricultural productivity because of the excessive flooding events in the southern part of the India as well. What are the infrastructure and economic impact? If you talk about Uttarakhand, because of the severe flooding events, there are several roads, bridges and power lines were disrupted, and it has been also observed that estimated that over $1 billion loss occurred because of this particular event in terms of direct cost and also in terms of indirect cost. For example, tourist and all, which are these towns are very famous for tourist based economies there like that. In the southern part, we have also observed a damage to the building, industries and transport system. For example, Chennai's IT sectors suffered major disruptions because of this 2015 flooding event, and therefore it has significant loss to the socio-economic conditions in this particular regions. What are the humanitarian crisis and relief efforts? In Uttarakhand, there are several tourist pilgrimages and all these were affected. Many operations were rescued led by NDRF, IEF and all, to rescue the people from one place to the another place, and also to resettle the locations or build bridges and all, so that we can have seamless connectivity from one place to the another place and can supply the essential goods and services there. And in the southern part, India part, we have evacuation and temporary shelters which were provided by NGO and governments, providing food and water like that. So, if you comparatively assess both the events, were, the factors were different. For example, in the Uttarakhand flood, monsoon, cloudburst and Gulf events were the primary leading cause of this flooding event in Uttarakhand. On the other hand, if you talk about the South Indian flooding event, northeast, monsoon, urbanization were the primary leading cause of flooding events in the South Indian part of the region. Here we have thousands of people have been died and affected. We have also hundreds of people have been affected because of these South Indian floods like that. Infrastructure damage, we have significant human infrastructures, or those are essential infrastructures were damaged because of these flooding events, also in the southern Indian part as well. And there are several government responses to mitigate or to temporarily relieve the significant damage caused by these different extreme catastrophic events on these two different regions like that. For example, policies, implementations, rescue operations, urban flood planning, reservoir management, so that we can avoid such conditions in the future scenarios like that. So, these are the case studies which are why we have discussed it, because based on these case studies we would be able to understand that similar type of extreme flooding events can occur in different parts of the country as well. And if the same types of flooding events or similar factors governed by the flooding events will occur in different parts of the country, we know about what could be our steps to prevent these future risk, or mitigation steps to at least lower down the socioeconomic damages caused by these extreme flooding events like that. For example, in Uttarakhand 2013 flood, we have for example, National Disaster Management Authority has interventions. They have made several policies, several mechanism to basically mitigate the effect of flooding. For example, ban on construction of near river banks, or completely ban of these construction near the river bank, because urban settlement are the leading or the most vulnerable region where these flooding events occurred, and that has been suffered quite significantly. And also the mitigation procedures, so that we can have reduce the life and support and prosperity loss we can assess, and then we can use these learnings for future steps as well. In the southern Indian part, in 2015 floods, we have learned about that urbanization is the leading cause, and therefore smart city strategies could be the innovative way to deal with these sort of flooding events in the urban clusters. For example, we have to think about improving the drainage pattern, storm drainage pattern, and etc., so that we can have enhanced urban water management things. We can increase resilience, better preparedness for the floods because of the early warning system, or let's say awareness program, or let's say changing the construction styles, something like that. We can think about the increased resilience of those particular areas. Also the effective flood managements, for example, reducing the impact of flooding events or zonation, or particular we can talk about how we can categorize different types of flooding events, and also based on different types of zonation in that particular region, so that we can have minimum impact caused by these different events like that. What are the further lessons we have learned from these different case studies? One of the primary reason behind the southern Indian flooding events was reservoir mismanagement. So we have to think about enhanced reservoir management, so that we can mitigate the effect of floods, or we can store the excess water during the high flows so that the downstream part will not be affected significantly. Or maybe we can store the water in upstream locations, and then we can release the water during that time when we require the water. For example, non-monsoon season, when we have a higher demand of water supply from those regions like that, so that we can also control the drought events also. So that is called the enhanced reservoir management, so that we can ensure the effective flood control and release of water, and that can minimize the effect of flooding events in the downstream part of the region like that. Then the another important learning of these from these case studies was improved early warning systems. Because if we have early warning system, for example weather forecasting, or we have to calculate the risk associated with the different flood levels, or let's say we have to know about what are those zones where we need to have some sort of prior assessment if the floods will occur, how much area will be inundated like that. Or based on zonation we can categorize, okay, zone A where we don't need any kind of construction or complete ban of the construction, or zone B where we can have a very lightweight or some sort of constructions, temporary constructions like that. Zone C and zone D, what type of constructions we can do in those particular regions, so that it can at least be there during the high flooding conditions like that. Then we have also learned about these studies that sustainable urban planning, we know that climate is changing, temperature is rising, extreme precipitation events are also rising, and when you have urban sprawl, urban clusters, or that urban clusters are growing very fastly, which means that we have a limited area where the water can go inside the ground, and most of the water will become like surface water. So therefore we have to think about how we can reroute these water to different areas where it can recharge to the ground, not to become everything as a surface water, so that we can have a little more influence because of these extreme flooding events. So sustainable urban planning is a very essential step toward managing these flooding. Sustainable urban planning also supports the controls deforestation. We don't have to cut down all the trees in a city. We have at least some sort of forestation region, so that it can reduce the velocity of flood if any kind of urban flooding will occur. And then we can have also urban sprawl, controlled urban sprawl. If we have urban expansion in certain region, we could also think about creating some sort of recharge wells or recharge areas, so that the extra surface water will go to that recharge areas and can become groundwater, or and at least can mitigate the effect of heavy surface water flooding conditions in those regions like that. So these are the case studies which has happened in historical period, and they have given certain clues that okay, if we have followed these steps, we might mitigate the effect of these extreme events if they reoccur in the future. But it might also possible that in the future conditions the floodings or extreme events will be slightly more heavier or more magnitude wise, and therefore we have to be better prepared for those events. It might also possible that when we are talking about extreme events, it may not happen alone, it can be combination of multiple different factors. For example, we can talk about extreme precipitation event and excessive glacier melting, or let's say flash flood with clough event like that. So all these events can occur together, and we have to think about how we can manage these cascading or these compound extremes problems in the future, so that we can have minimize the effect caused by these different types of flooding events. We can also think about flood resistant infrastructure, so that we can at least control the impact of these floods. We can control the flooding significant damage because of the flood in certain region, or let's say in higher Himalaya or Himalayan region, or the region which are very close to those where there is a significant higher occurrences of flood is reported, we have to think about those flood resistant infrastructures there, so that we can at least mitigate the impact of these flooding events in those regions like that. So if you look at this map tells that flash floods events are increasing consistently across different parts of the world. Flood frequencies, and basically it is increasing. If you look at the blue color, every scenarios suggesting that all these flood events are increasing, particularly in the Indian and neighboring regions like that, or tropical regions like that. So we have to be little bit more prepared for these extreme events, extreme flooding events, so that we can minimize their significant damage caused by these extreme events like that. What are the summaries from this particular lecture is both disasters, for example 2013 Uttarakhand event and 2015 South Indian events highlights vulnerability of India's disaster preparedness. Both have exposed our management or our preparedness towards the extreme flooding events or extreme climatic events, which is driven by climate change as well as because of the human activities, how we can manage it for future, and what kind of the lesson we have learned from these case studies, so that we can prevent the negative side of these flooding events in future or different parts of the country like that. Effective risk reduction requires a combination of policies, technology and community engagement. So we have to think about policy, technological advancement and community engagement, so that we can mitigate the effect of these different flood disasters or extreme events in the future. We have also learned in this particular lecture that climate change is exacerbating the extreme weather events. We have also talked about multiple times in the past few lectures that because of the climate change, rainfall is increasing, temperature is rising, therefore flooding events will become more common, and particularly if we are looking at the urban areas, these are very common now because of the urban settlements is growing, and lots of lakes area has been disappeared, which are potential region for recharge zone, and therefore and on top of that extreme rainfall events are also rising. So we have to make a balance between sustainable development with the view of ongoing climate change conditions in different regions, so that at least we can manage all these extreme events in certain regions like that. So whatever we have I have taken from these particular lecture, you can go through all these websites. You can read about multiple case studies on extreme rainfall or extreme flooding events across country India. You can also read about India disaster report or landslide atlas of India or flood affected regions of India like that, disaster management in the complex of Himalayan terrain and natural hazards and risk mitigations like that. These are the books and reports. You can also go through this, and then you can have an idea about what is the historical steps, what is the present condition, and what could be the future steps, so that we can mitigate the impact of these extreme flooding events or disasters in different parts of the country like that. Okay, so in the next lecture we will talk about more on different types of extreme climatic events in the different parts of the country, and we will discuss about how different types of policy interventions and mitigation strategies and the impact which are caused by all these different types of extreme events, and how we can manage it in the future context. Thank you so much for your attention.